Go.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming to tonight's meeting. It's the Finance Advisory Committee meeting. We're going to pick up from where we left off last Tuesday, effectively. We have absence. I don't believe we need to consider any variations of order of business. I think everything's in the right order. Do we have anything in from any members of the public, Sean?
Not for this meeting, no.
Brilliant, thank you. We don't have any members of the press or public, so we don't need to consider excluding anybody. And as far as declaration of members' interest, I'm a member of the Whitworth committee, as is Alan Long. Does anybody else have any other declarations they need to make? So if we go straight on to point 6 and discuss the budget. I'm presuming you've all seen the papers for the budget come round. Is that a yes from everybody? Everybody's seen the budget?
Yes, you're not the clearest, Steve. We can hear you, but it's not the clearest.
Yeah, I can't hear you at all.
Right, okay. My internet seems as if it's okay. Is that any better?
No.
Right, hang on a second. I'm getting a lot of feedback from you, Dave, there.
There is a lot of feedback from Dave.
Why?
I don't know, but it's been like that every meeting so far.
It was all right last night.
No, it wasn't. You were getting feedback last night. You're near to something that's...
Is that any better for me now? No? Right. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Sean, can you stop recording and I'm going to have to log out and log back in again. All right. So if we go on to the budget for 21-22, has everybody looked at the paperwork for this?
Yes, we've seen this last time, didn't we?
There's been some amendments on there, though, James, this time.
There's what?
There's been some amendments on the paperwork.
What?
If we look at the budget for next year, one of the major changes that I asked Sean to make was for the last 2 years, we've allocated £29,000 for salaries. Last year, we only spent £19,901, although we didn't have an assistant clerk and we were having the locum clerk, which was yourself, Sean, at the time. So from August this year, we've had Sean in, August last year you were in place, Sean, weren't you? Sorry, apologies. So this current year, we allocate £29,000. We're kind of 2/3 of the way through the year, roughly, and we've spent 15,000 so far. But we know we've still got November, December, January, February, March still to go. So 5 months still to go. So on the last sheet that we had, Sean had allocated £36,000 to wages, and I've asked to up that to 42,000 in anticipation that we have our own maintenance person. Can you all see that on there?
Mm.
Yeah. I think the intention with the maintenance person, and something which will be discussed tomorrow night at personnel, is that they'll have a 5-hour minimum weekly contract, and then anything up and above 5 hours will be worked through the the personnel committee. But I think it's important that we allocate sufficient funds to employ a member of staff for the things we're going to need to do. Does anybody have any questions on that?
No.
No. Does anybody have any questions on any of the other figures within that then?
Has anything else been changed since we last seen these?
There was, Sean, what other changes is there within these figures?
I've had a fiddle about with the base one is miscellaneous. I've moved it to the right miscellaneous. It was in the wrong miscellaneous. So I have to have a free. It's to do with the coding on the system. It's free for it. But apart from that, the previous miscellaneous was 0. The new miscellaneous is 3,000. If that, they've just swapped over. There isn't a vast amount of changes per se from the one you've seen at all. The biggest one was definitely the finance. There's things on here that were on here before, but we need to discuss. such as like the community awards. The office room hire I've left at 15,000 because I wasn't quite sure what you were doing, and obviously advertising and publicity is the 8.4 as pointed out. The rest of it is very much of a bit of a likeness of what happened last year, apart from slight increases such as the insurance is slightly increased. The subscriptions has slightly increased because we know that they went up a bit last year with inflation. Things like that really at the moment. But there isn't anything that you haven't seen, I don't think, on here that's altered. The main one was the 42,000.
Okay. The just based on the current year, Alan, do you know when the Whitworth are going to apply for the money for the project grant?
Can't hear you.
Alan, you're on mute.
Yeah, it's in December. We're intending to apply for it in December.
Okay.
That's the 10K.
That's fine. I mean, that's there, and I just thought I'd ask while we're on.
It might slip into January, but we'll certainly need it.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So we know that application is going to come in, so that's not a problem. Other than that, I did notice, Sean, that the miscellaneous had moved from one section to another. There's a couple of areas, Sean, that I noticed were running a deficit this year.
Yes.
But I'm just looking for the right places where we were running deficit, but I think I'm on the wrong sheet, actually. I need to be on this one, I think. No, I don't. I need to be on this one. Yeah, so when I look at it, so staff training and expenses, we've gone over by £902.
Yeah, there's a bit of an issue with that, being that there's been 2 payments been coming out for the we're owed some money back, and they've agreed to sort of, well, they highlighted it and agreed to send it back, but there's been one standing order that's been coming out of the old bank account and one that's been coming out of the new bank account because we didn't realize it hadn't been cancelled. So I've now, Dawn and Mary have both done me a letter to close and cancel any standing orders and close the accounts at Royal Bank of Scotland, but we are owed a sum of money back from Personal Advice and Solutions, which should fix that deficit.
Do we know how much we're owed back, Sean?
Not off the top of my head, no. I have got it written down somewhere, but I've not got the paperwork with me now.
Okay, can you just drop the finance committee an email to when you've got that with what we're due back, please?
Yeah.
Dave?
Under staff training, if we're going to have somebody else employed, plus we've got the footpath guy who's waiting to go into training, are we going to have enough money sitting there?
If we go over budget this year on it, Dave.
Can't hear you.
Dave, if we go over budget on it this year, it'll probably come out of a contingency that we put to one side. It depends how quickly we manage to employ another person.
Right.
Okay.
I'm just aware there's some training outstanding.
Yeah, that's fine. I presume, Sean, that would be the way forward to use contingency funds if need be.
Yeah, if we have to. As I say, I'm hopeful that that we won't. As I say, it depends what type of training that we need as well. Like a lot of the training that, as I say, that me and Ian are doing, apart from a few standouts, are free through DALC. And a lot of the counsellor training as well is free through DALC because we're an enhanced subscriber. But there are other bits, sort of specialist areas that are more expensive, such as, we need website training, which is actually on the personnel agenda and the full council meeting agenda. Well, Ian needs website training, and then it's things like chainsaw training and things like that I'm not sure how pricey those things are gonna get. Yeah, so it's up to you. So I've left it the same.
That's fine. Dawn?
Can you just I'm not muted, that makes a change. Can you just explain what the contingency is for? Because this year you've only put 10 and the year before was 20.
Dawn, I cannot discuss that with you now. Can I give you a phone call later? There was a reason for us doing that last year, but it's not one that I can talk about now. Can I either talk about that after the meeting or in a more confidential section of the meeting later?
Yes, that'll be fine. What's the miscellaneous for as well? You've allocated?
Miscellaneous is quite literally just any random things that don't fall into that budget section.
Is that not contingency?
No.
Just before we move on from that, do we want to have a private section at the end of the meeting to discuss contingency so that
I think that's going to have to be discussed at the end, yes, particularly if you want that.
Then how can we agree this budget if I haven't got the full information?
Well, in a way, you aren't agreeing the budget today. Okay. You're recommending it, but
Yeah,
as I say.
fine, good.
Okay,
Yeah.
what I'd like to do is I'd like to propose that we move the budget into private at the end of this meeting, please.
Can you just move contingency rather than the whole budget, if that's all right?
I'd like to move contingency into private at the end of this meeting, please. We will second that. Thank you, James. All in favour? Lovely. Okay, so we move that into private. Right. Okay. Right. So, Sean, are there any other anomalies such as the staff training where we've been charged twice that we need to be aware of?
Not really, no. So there are, as I say, you know, obviously that I've been spending some time restructuring the budget so that you can understand what powers we're making payments under. So some things appear twice. They do drop off, so they should drop off next year as they don't appear in the budgets anymore. But there are some things that do seem to double up. Say, for example, the Whitworth Centre project, Whitworth Centre Park, Section 19, Whitworth Centre. So they now come under the Section 19 grants as opposed to. But apart from that, as I say, that was all sort of explained to you last year when we were going through this and when we started to do it. But apart from that, there shouldn't be any other general irregularities. The one thing that I did note is environmental provision. It's a bit of a catch-all, generally, environmental provision for really anything that's done. And we're we've spent very little of that budget at the moment. That just, as I say, it's sort of there. I didn't know if we wanted to perhaps, I don't know, consider diverting it, but I'm not sure or maybe bring it down. But if we bring it down and we're back to normal service, and I'm sure Dave can use lots of the environmental provision or has ideas. Not only that, but I know that Anne has made requests of the environmental provision budget as well. So I'd perhaps leave it as it is, but
I would suggest that we do leave that as it is, because we do know that as things get back to normal, we've got quite a lot of impact with global warming. We need to look at surveys and things. So Alan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just slightly confused because I thought last time we said we come up with we're doing it the same as we did the last meeting, which is talking about the budget before we've agreed what we want to do. So I thought we'd agreed at the last meeting we would come up with a set of projects, which we've done. We would agree what those project areas would be, and we'd fix the budget around the projects. And we changed our mind on that because that's exactly why we left the meeting last week.
I think can I answer this? I think part of the problem is that quite a lot of the projects are completely uncosted. There are some that have got generalized figures, but there are other projects that have come up, which some of them look to be enormous projects that we haven't had costs for because they came in very recently.
We don't.
I'd like to just interrupt there. Actually, I think Alan's right. I think I'm looking at this and thinking we're doing it the right way around. Actually, we should be doing 8, then 7, 6.
Just vary the order.
So, Alan, thank you for that. You're absolutely right, because the list of projects we do need to discuss. But just before we do that, can I just come back to another question I had on this? In fact, no, I'll come back to this question, actually. Right, okay, so apologies, everyone. I would like to propose that we move the orders of 8, 7, 6, and number 8 becomes number 6. Number 7 can stay as 7, and number 6 moves to number 8.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. All in favour? Lovely. Thank you. Okay, sorry, guys. I misread that. So the proposal for project, I think, if I can clear up where I am with this straight away so that we know where we stand. Have you all seen the list of proposed projects?
No.
It was sent through with the papers, James.
Today?
Yes.
We only just got that, though, haven't we, this afternoon?
Yes.
I didn't get mine till late.
Yeah, but that was because we were waiting for responses from everybody, wasn't it? They had up to yesterday to respond, so we could only do this list today. So
it's in the papers today. It's easy to find it. I'm reading it now.
Yeah, I've got it, but it came fairly late. That's what I'm just trying to say.
Well, if I can start with this while you've not seen it. So there's a few things that on here. So number 3, okay, which is about the Whitworth. It's really important that we put a contingency figure away for the Whitworth in case of any issues that we may have next year, because we don't know which way we're going to go with COVID. I'm certainly happy to set aside £20,000 towards the Whitworth as a contingency, but it would only be given if it was absolutely necessary. So that's one thing. And I think the other thing is we've got to look at the office space, because hopefully on Thursday night, as a council, we're all going to agree that we're going to move into either the Sir Joseph Whitworth room or the Lady Whitworth room.
Lady Whitworth.
Okay, well, we're going to agree that at the meeting, so we're not going to make a decision on that tonight, but we're going to need money to furnish that. We're going to need money. I mean, obviously, there will be some furniture, but we need to do with it what we need to do. We may need to decorate it. We're certainly going to need a decent photocopy, scanner and printer. So I would suggest that we've got £20,000 set aside for the Whitworth and £10,000 to set aside for the new office space, so that we can get signage in the Whitworth, so that we can make sure the Whitworth is our home. So they're the two things that I'd like to say. Can I just point out number 6 and number 7, which was Anne's request, I'm presuming, for the environment section. We already have a provision of 9,500 towards the environment provision. I think 6 and 7 we can leave off there.
Yeah.
We've also got, so if we're saying 20,000 to the Whitworth, we're saying 10,000 towards the office and getting that up and ready for us to go into. We've also just increased the wages bill by 13,000 from 29 to 42. So that actually takes up 43,000 of the 60,000 precept, which leaves us with 17,000 for other causes. So they're the three things I'd like to just put in the mix, and then it's up to everybody else what they think with the other 17,000. James?
Yeah, a late one came in just a while ago from the head of our planning committee for a fighting fund, in effect, to help and to combat any issues we might get with ludicrous projects coming up towards us, that we can actually actively fight and do something significant to help our environment in that way, to stop these crazy planning ideas. This legal fund potentially could extend to other issues we might need to cover ourselves with us in the future as well. Again, we don't know how many projects we're going to have to go against, or to have to actively go legal against. So the monetary side of it is open, but a provision would be good. No provision is no action.
Okay, thank you, James. Sean?
By law, the only thing that you can use money for this towards would be for, say, perhaps bringing in somebody to help you write your comment. You have no authority to legally challenge any planning application decisions whatsoever. That's well beyond your remit. The only thing you could do is would be pay to get somebody in. So, say, for example, the group that helped Councillor Farmer, they brought in a gentleman to help them write the consultation documents, but beyond that, there's no power to do anything.
Well, that's the kind of advice we need, though. That's the kind of advice we need to know what we can do to legally challenge them.
James, I agree, and I think when we look at the development going on the A6 at the minute, it was PD10 land. It should never have been given planning permission, and yet we didn't have the knowledge or expertise to fight that. And I think you're absolutely right, and I think Julie's absolutely right, that we should have a fund put aside for holding our planners to account, quite frankly, because at the minute, the planning process seems a bit broken, in all honesty, in my opinion. So I agree that we should set aside a figure for that. To bring in expert help where it's needed. I would think it would be few and far between, but it will be quite costly. So do you have a suggested figure for that, James?
Again, because of the actual uncertainty of how many projects might actually come in that might be an issue, it's not, well, again, it's a thing that perhaps planning committee can look at and come up with a number for.
The problem is,
you've got to have at least a £10,000 fighting fund, in my opinion.
Okay, the problem is that we need to agree the precept and the budget tonight, so we can take it to council on Thursday. So if you're saying 10,000, I'm happy to go with 10,000.
Right.
you have to put it to the vote of the planning committee, of the
Of the
finance committee,
yeah.
actually.
Sorry, Don. I'm happy to go with the recommendation, I should say.
Well, according to what I've seen on the A6, I think all of those, that particular project we're talking about, all of the houses look like they were going to have indoor swimming pools at the moment, by the looks of it.
Okay, Alan.
Yes, David wanted to go. You had your hand up before, Dave. Did you want to go?
No, you're right. You go.
Sorry, Dave. I didn't see you.
I think there are two sides to this. Don't forget, we're looking to ask the members of the public for a £60,000 increase in the precept at a time when people haven't got much money. And therefore, we need to be very careful about what we are saying this money is going to be spent on. This additional money is going to be spent on. While I accept we need to put some money aside for the office, but telling the local public we're going to spend 10 grand on moving the office probably ain't going to go down very well with the local community. Versus spending stuff on the local community. Similarly, I would worry about making a commitment from that 60 grand to put 10 grand into legal costs, which again, you might argue that's got a benefit with the local community, but it's not a visible commitment. So I'm going to go back to the things I wrote were not in a way specific projects. They were areas that the council would choose to invest in over the next year. We don't at this time need to define what those specific projects might be. You've referred to wages. Well, that's fine. But again, I wouldn't talk about the wages increase. I would talk about number 5 on the list. You're saying it's not £10,000. We're going to invest in more additional direct labour to do things such as grass verges and anything else that you would add to that list. I don't know whether it's going to be 2,000 or 7,000. It doesn't matter for this conversation, I don't think. It's about setting the agenda for our local community of where we're going to invest. And I think sort of local projects such as grass verges and other things Dave will come up with is a good area. So I would suggest we stick to those kind of things in this conversation. And yeah, similarly, number 1, it's about making a commitment to the local community. I know we've already covered the cinema project in there. Doesn't matter. We're saying here we're going to spend £10,000 more on youth projects than we have previously, because we spent nothing on youth projects last year, or indeed the year before that. Part of that will be the cinema project of £6,000. So I guess I'm advocating a version of the 6 points I sent through with whatever, because the 6 points I've written are written with the public in mind and demonstrating value for money to the local community. Sorry, James.
Yeah, as it stands today, there are currently money set aside in the budget for areas that we currently fund that we do not have a detailed financial breakdown for. We don't have an analysis for how much we're giving out at the moment and what we're getting back for the value for money for that. So we don't see in some of these areas the full breakdown. So when we say we're going to allocate £10,000 towards something now, it's no different than other things on the budget where we're not getting a detailed financial breakdown of exactly what the people are getting. So saying we're going to have £10,000 for a fighting fund or for environmental is no different to looking down the budget at the moment and seeing £10,000 for something without another detailed breakdown of the finance involved.
Sorry, can I just interrupt there? I mean, I think that the thing we've got to remember is that the upping of the precept this year, whilst I understand it's not going to be terribly popular, I think for the future of Darley-Dale and for the future of the services of Darley-Dale, I think it's really important. And I think we're worrying a bit too much about how we dress it up to sell it to the public, when in reality, without this money, we can't work properly for the benefit of the people of Darley-Dale. So if I give you an example with what I've written down here, okay, which covers £53,000 of the 60,000 we're asking for, £20,000 to the Whitworth. You know, the Whitworth Park is a resource that's used by young, middle-aged and elderly people. And, you know, if the Whitworth doesn't need the money, fantastic, we can divert it off to somewhere else. You know, so, but at the end of the day, the park is there for everybody in the whole area to enjoy. The office, and I know it's not what everybody wants to hear, that the council have got to spend £10,000 moving offices, but actually that's to the benefit of the public of Darley-Dale when it comes to how much work we can achieve, sitting down face to face with them, having meetings, being more organised and being more efficient. That's to the benefit of the people of Darley-Dale, and it means that actually the year after we don't have to spend that 10,000 and we can divert that off. We're in really, really incredible times at the minute. The wages is we need another member of staff, that rather than us constantly farming out work and finding that we can't get somebody to do specific jobs. So again, it's going to employ somebody in the local community. So, well, you would hope it's going to be someone in the local community. So it's going to be a benefit to the area. And I think, you know, your £10,000 suggestion, James, for the planning, if you look at planning applications that cause the most consternation to the public of Darley-Dale, it's the ones that shouldn't really go ahead. And so having money, whether it be £5,000 or £10,000 to put towards fighting to get, or not fighting, but to get the right advice to prevent some of these, you know, from happening in the area, is to the benefit of everyone. I do think we need to look at youth provision. I do think we need to look at making sure that people aren't isolated. You know, and we've got the benefit of the Whitworth, that we can look at projects to get people in there, no doubt about it. But I think all of these things build a better Darley-Dale, and it gives a better future for Darley-Dale. Dave?
On items 8, 10, 11, 12 and 13, they're all principally projects or demands on finance we haven't even got and we've never had. Every time something happens, we're plugging holes. The piece of land that I'm referring to that I feel that we should be looking at purchasing is a buffer piece of land. It's a buffer zone between county and district, and it would make an asset to the community. There's another couple of pieces of land along the A6 that I've looked at, and if they come up for sale, we can't touch them. The one at the opposite the grouse, there's a piece of land there. It's sitting there waiting for a load of houses to get shoved on it. And it would do, if the pub went, that would go with it. And there's another one a bit further down near the Whitworth. There's a piece of land there that they've had horses on. It's gone into derelict now. I've got Jason Farmer looking to see who owns it. And those are the sort of piece of land that we should be looking to think, right, we've got 20 grand to buy them or whatever we need. We've got no money to buy them. And going into the youth provision, there's 4.5 grand sitting somewhere, and I don't know where it is, Sean, on the system.
Under
but
4,000. It's in the bank account, Royal Bank of Scotland.
Right. So we've got 4.5 grand sitting in there, and we've got a provision.
Dave, so that amount for the youth provision, it's under 4,000, but it is sat in an account. And what we're talking about is doing up and above the things that we've done this year. And this year and next year are going to be a bit funny years because of COVID. And the plan will be that next year we'll put out to public consultation what they want us to use the money for. It would have been lovely to do a public consultation this year, but at the minute what we're doing is we're looking at the reason why we're asking to raise the precept. And we're looking to raise the precept for many different reasons. But first of all, it's to give value to the people of Darley-Dale with the services that they're expecting and that we want to provide. Alan?
Yeah, I'm funnily enough, I'm not sure we're saying too many different things here. So number 2 on here is a summary of all the allotment type things. So I'm advocating 10 grand of the 60 is allocated for allotment space. For the 20 grand Whitworth you've already mentioned, which is number 3. So number 2 is what Dave's just said. Number 3 is what you said. Number 4 is what you said. Number 1, we're kind of hinting at, but we haven't nailed that yet. So I don't think we're so far apart. It's about being clear on the areas that we're going to invest, and we're not that far apart.
No.
James?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that ultimately the ideas are all there in absolute principle. The idea tonight is really to say to ourselves, We have a set of money set aside currently for a budget at the moment. We see the fact we want to do more for the community. We know that these projects are going to cost a certain amount of money, also, although it is slightly fluid because of the ongoing situation. And it's saying to ourselves, do we want to do these projects or don't we? Because if we haven't got the money, we can't do any of these fantastic things.
Right. And in my opinion, I'm going to be quite frank, I joined the council 2 years ago in December, and I think we've done very little for the community of Darley-Dale. We don't get involved in doing things because we haven't got the funds. And whilst it's not nice to have to discuss raising the precept, we don't have a choice. We're lagging behind all the other local authorities for the services we want to provide. And there's only one way we can provide them services that are expected of us and make us a council that actually is proactive, not reactive, and that's by raising the precept. So the fact that we know why we're asking for the 60,000, we could ask for more. We genuinely, with everything that's on this list, there is 13 items on this list. You know, there's things like a central reservation for pedestrians somewhere outside of St Elphin's, or where the nursery and the school are, to make the road safer. We've got all of these things, but without raising the precept to 100,000, that's not possible. What we've got to do is look at the financial year ahead, pick and choose what we can do, and work within what is reasonable. It's a £27, I think, per Band D property rise, 52.5 pence a week, to provide better services. And in my opinion, it's got to be done. So, Dave?
In the past, we've always had a lot of help from the district, which is now being pulled back. So we've got to be self-sufficient, and we've got to show the public that we're actually doing something in the community. In the past, we've bumbled along and we've kept everything low to keep everybody happy. But if you have the public's opinion, Darley-Dale Council do bugger all. That's basically what comes over. They see the park as an asset. They see nothing else. And what I'm trying to do with the projects I'm trying to throw at is to bring the community together in an intergenerational thing, to develop assets that we can use. Not now, I'm trying to go future. I'm not plugging holes. I'm not begging bits of land now. It's for the future, because Darley-Dale are going to lose every little plot of land in Darley-Dale if we don't do something about it. And we ain't got the money to do nothing. Somebody pulls the rug from under us, we ain't got nowhere to go. We are also, and I'm quite aware of the Whitworth, I've put a lot of time into the Whitworth over the years. The last thing I want to do is see that come to any harm through the climate that we're in at the moment. So without this budget that we're trying to put together, we could be on our arse as easy as wink, because we've got no money in the background. And that's my problem.
Yeah, I think, Dave, if we sensibly look at this...
Can't hear you, Steve.
Dave, so if we say that COVID clears up early next year and the Whitworth don't need to come back for additional funding, that £20,000 can be used then and diverted to another project. Whether it be buying a plot of land to put more allotments on, whether it's for youth provision, or whether it's for... there can be many different things that we can use the money for. What we're deciding here is that actually we do need this additional 60,000 to work on behalf of the local residents, because if we don't do it, we're going nowhere. Dave?
What we've got to do is stop rolling over to builders, because we can't afford the little plot of land that they just put 10 grand into. And we're arguing over somebody putting 5 houses on a piece of land that we could have bought and stopped them. Yeah. And there's 2 or 3 of them on the A6 at the moment that if they come up for sale, we ain't got no money.
Yeah. James?
Yeah, so just to summarise all this, do we want to pick the projects now that we feel strongly enough that support the amount of money that they've been allocated, so we can then put it into the precept and present it, obviously, to the council on Thursday?
Okay. Dawn? You're on mute, Dawn.
Sorry. Can I ask Sean, are you as our responsible finance officer, are you comfortable with this?
I think we need to look
this way. Do budgets work that we'll put 20 grand in for the Whitworth, but if they don't need it, we'll use it for something else?
I mean, to some degree, because we're always doing our budget, one, so far out, and two, with a single funding stream that only comes in. It's not like, for example, Alan's budgets that come in and it changes from month to month to month. Ours does come in one massive chunk to decide what it is that we're doing for the entire year. Now, yes, I would, and I think we've all said it and it's been repeated a lot. Yes, we would like, consultations, and we would like far more forward planning, which is what we've been trying to do to some degree over this. Now, I personally, if we're talking about projects, without costing out the projects, we're going to have difficulty saying for definite that this is what we can do. I have to say that Alan's discussions of generalities and placing money into areas for use is probably as good a suggestion, whether or not that be an area for getting help on consultation for planning, or whether that be an area on sort of the Whitworth contingency. We know that that's potentially going to be quite a serious problem lay down the line. We are going to have funding for the office space, but as I say, as the budgets for all that we sort of say that we don't get breakdowns, you get breakdowns quite regularly, because you have every payment sheet that we have, but you haven't got perhaps the forwarding breakdowns. But to some degree, you get the breakdown, and the budget is based essentially off of what went the previous year, because quite frankly, things don't tend to change. For years, I'd imagine this budget's been set in very much the same way, because we know what we're spending, because we always spend the same things on the same things. We're starting to get a bit more creative now. And
so my question though is, you are comfortable with, I'm not comfortable with how this is being discussed. You are comfortable as our responsible finance officer to say, we're going to put 20 grand in there. We don't spend it on the Whitworth, we'll shove it into planning.
I think I think
that's the way we do it, is it?
No,
Alan,
all that was just.
No, is that, if Sean's happy with it, then I'm happy. I'm a lay person, I don't know things, so I'm just looking to.
We're making contingencies. These are budgets for contingency to be spent on certain items. We never ever guarantee that we're going to spend every single penny on every single item, because we can't. We also can't. We can guess what inflation will be. We can guess what staff we can bring on. We can guess a variety of things. I wouldn't have guessed sitting here that my wages would be, at the level that we're at now, or they're at the level that Ian's were at, and things like that. You can't always guarantee it, because our needs change throughout the year. And as I think Alan was sort of saying there, we are making budgets for a contingency to do certain things. So whenever this has happened before, it just ends up dropping into our, when things aren't spent, it drops into our reserves. When things are more is spent, it's either moved from other budget items, or it's taken out of our reserves. I don't think it's a wildly unreasonable way of working. I mean, Alan may correct me if he's wrong, or James may correct me if they're wrong, or Steve may correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely correct. We've done it already before. And I'm sure during your time on the council, Dawn, you've moved funds from one allocation to another allocation because you had the funds.
Okay, I just want
my main thing, and the one that I will say, is that it needs agreeing and approving at council meetings, which is why we have the council meetings. If we're going to change, it goes through the proper agreement and the proper approval.
Alan?
Thank you, Sean.
I'll just kick off with a proposal. So proposal based on what I've heard is we're going to increase our precept by £60,000. We're going to set £20,000 as a contingency into the reserves for the Whitworth, which if we don't use, we'll either keep it in reserves or we'll spend it on another project. We're going to spend, I'll call it 10k on additional wages. You might say it needs to be 13k to fund more local work that local people want done, such as grant surgeries. I think we're all agreed on that one. We're going to set 10k aside for allotments, and that'll be either an additional amount for allotments, which will either be spending money on improving the allotments that are there already, or on creating some additional allotments, which will either be on the space that's there already or by acquiring some additional land. The other two bits then, which is if we want to do this, would be 10k set aside to fight planning decisions on behalf of residents, albeit I'm a little unclear on whether we can legally do that, and 10k to enable the town council to move offices. That's kind of where I think we've got to in this meeting. I would rather, and I'd be happy with that as an outcome. Would I rather of the legal challenge and the 20k that's being spent on legal and offices half of that was spent on something like youth projects or other community projects, yes, I would, because I think that's an easier sell. But I'll start with those 6 items as a starter for 10 for the conversation.
I think, Alan, the good thing is that once we know what we need to put in the office, I don't suspect we'll spend 10,000, so we will divert some of that off to a youth project, for argument's sake. And the £10,000 for it's not actually for fighting planning, Alan. It's all that's to do is to bring somebody in to give us advice and perhaps to prepare a letter, which would be better than we can do as a council. We can't legally challenge planning applications, but we can take advice from an outside source. So I'm happy to second that proposal, Alan. I do agree with you that I don't want to spend 10,000 on the office, and hopefully we won't, which means we can divert that off elsewhere. Dave?
Currently, I'm sitting on 2 projects, possibly 3 projects that are a bit fluid on 2 of them. One is the community garden. I've now taken probably back ownership of the land, and there's going to be a cost on there. At the moment, that is going to...
Alan suggested putting 10,000 extra onto the budget for allotments. So that covers that.
That'll cover that.
Yeah.
But I've got another piece of land up the back here that is possibly going to be anything up to £20,000. So what I'm trying to say to you is, if the budget is put up, the precept's put up, and the budget's flexible, and like Alan's been saying, we've got this money sitting in the Whitworth and it don't get used, then we've got the contingency to use that on purchasing something that's going to community asset, because it does then come back into the community as an asset. We're not spending it frivolously. We're buying a lump of land that nobody else can have hold of.
But that land's not for sale at the minute, Dave. And so what we're saying is that actually what Alan's recommendation is, or his proposal is that we allocate 20,000 towards the Whitworth, 10,000 towards allotments, 10,000 in wages, 10,000 to assist us with difficult planning applications, and 10,000 towards the office. That covers the £60,000 rise. And if we don't use that money for them things, then that will be discussed at future finance and future council meetings. So we're basically agreeing the principle of the £60,000 raise. We're putting them onto them 5 items, which is what we said. We wanted 4 or 5 projects to allocate this money, but they may not all of that money may not get used on them. What we're doing is we're agreeing a principle of why we're asking for the 60,000.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that in terms of if, as you're building it, you actually already have just under £6,000 for youth provision as part of this budget and as part of what's in there. So that probably needs to be mentioned, that we're not just leaving youth project out in the wind. There is in fact funding there for it as well. And to be fair, the cinema was aimed as a youth project itself. The other thing is, Dave, if you want to have a chat with me, perhaps we can find for some of these things outside sources of funding, particularly if they're going to be community type things. You know, there's things like awards for all. There are other things like grants and things that we could possibly access as a town council that we've never really had time to look at before, or even really the projects to move forward with before. But perhaps there is other ways to look outside funding as well, not just necessarily the budget. So perhaps we don't need to just cap ourselves into it just has to be this. There are other potential areas that we can work to.
James?
Yeah, I'm okay with that breakdown of those very simple areas, but I would say to one area, I think we need to break it up a little bit, which is the office. I don't think we can go in with just £10,000 and a fluid situation. I think maybe bringing a couple of Anne's projects in there as well, potentially into that.
Anne's projects are already covered by the provision. There's £9,500
through the
environmental provision, so we're already covered within that. And what we're saying is we're bringing to the council 4 or 5 projects to explain why we want to raise the precept. And we will sit and point out to full council that if that money isn't used for that purpose, it will be diverted off to give extra for youth provision, for argument's sake.
Yeah, I hear you. It's just £10,000.
I think we're getting bogged down in the semantics, but you know, the worry about the 10,000 for the office is we're starting an office pretty much from scratch. And you know, getting a decent photocopier, scanner, printer, that's going to cost quite a considerable bit of money. You know, getting to make sure everything's conforming to health and safety. providing facilities such as a kettle, a microwave, fridge, to enable the clerk and the assistant clerk and councillors and public that come in to be able to habitate that office properly. We're not saying we're going to waste 10,000 on the office. We're saying we're putting a provision there for £10,000. We'll use what we need of that and then divert the rest off. Otherwise, we're going to come back to council with a list of 20 items. We want a list of 4 or 5. We want to keep it simple to show them this is why we're asking for this additional money. We want to do more for the area. We need to put a provision in. But, you know, we can argue the same for the Whitworth money, that we're not going to spend 20,000 on the Whitworth, hopefully. So then we've got to, but we're just getting bogged down in semantics.
I'm okay with that.
Dave?
We realistically need a town maintenance fund. So we just had an emergency the other day. We just spent 800 quid that's come from somewhere. We don't know where.
Dave, I'm going to, sorry, I know what you're saying, but we've got a contingency fund for things like that already. We do already have that contingency fund.
There's a contingency fund, Dave.
How much?
10,000.
10,000.
Right.
Okay.
So
we've got 5 projects.
Okay, I would like to second Alan's proposal, which is that we accept 20,000 for the Whitworth, set aside just in case 10,000 to allotments, 10,000 to wages, 10,000 to planning, and 10,000 towards an office. And anything that doesn't get spent, we will divert off to where it would be needed for things such as youth provision. But we do already have a youth provision in place, so the youth aren't being forgotten.
Okay.
So I'm seconding Alan's proposal. Can we have a vote? Who's in agreement with that, please? Dave, James. Dawn?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
Let it go to full council.
That motion then is passed, that we recommend that to council, and we'll put it to full council on.
Do you have a problem, James?
Yeah, I don't understand why you wouldn't want to help the community, that's all.
Because, as I said last time, these times, we're not going through it. It's passed. It's fine.
Okay, look, then, I mean, I think, you know, we're all entitled to our own opinion, and I think, Dawn, you did say last time that you would rather not raise the precept at this time, but I think if we want to be progressive as a council, we don't have a choice but to raise the precept. That's my opinion. You know, we've passed that we'll recommend this precept increase to council, and we'll put the full council will decide on it. But I think Alan's absolutely right. We're going with them 5 projects, and thank you all for your feedback. Next year, it really is important that we get this out to the public so that they can tell us what they want. Because if they tell us they want certain things and they want us to spend their money on certain things, I think it's important we listen to them. Okay? So, Sean, we've moved that motion and passed it, and we'll put that to council. So if you can prepare the paperwork for Thursday for that, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us then on to number 7. So we've just done the project. So
Have you approved the minutes? Sorry, Steve, but have you approved the minutes and the thing, because there's quite a few sets on there, and
I don't
the financial reports?
I don't think it's on here, is it?
It's on mine, number 6, weirdly, I think.
I've only got 1 to 10, and it doesn't say about
6 is budget.
Yeah, I don't.
I am looking at a very different agenda to you guys then.
You've got the last one. This one's different.
We'll bring that to full council on Thursday.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we can spend a little bit of time if needs be and go through that Thursday.
Okie dokie.
Okay. So we've discussed the proposals for the project. So the question then is, and I think we've pretty much already voted, but we'll need to take a vote on this. Are we then happy to recommend a £60,000 raise to our precept up to £208,637? Alan?
Yes.
James?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to propose then that we accept the recommendation, or we recommend to the council that we increase the precept by 60,000 for next year to £208,637. Do I have anyone to second that, please? James, thank you. In favour? Thank you. Against? Abstentions? Lovely. Thank you, Dawn. Okay, so we've now discussed the project and the precept, so we go on to the budget. So, John, the budget is going to be slightly different to what we have in front of us because we're going to ask for the addition of them 5 items to be added to the budget. What I did have a question for you regarding the under income. It said number 1110, Derbyshire District Council footpath grant. Now, at the moment we haven't received that. Is that because we haven't applied for it?
Paperwork needs signing off, but we've not been in person to sign off. I think Mary may in fact have signed it. I will double check on that one. But yeah, we have to. Hang on a second. Let me just have a look. I've got that one there. Yeah, I'll chase that up. I thought that Mary had signed it and then we'd submitted the paperwork, but I will chase them up with the county council. All right.
He's done.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, the 13,000 you was talking about for the wages, is that on top of the 36 that you've agreed? Is that the figure will be?
It was 42,000. The old that's I think that might be an old budget you're looking at. The current one that we're looking at has got
nowhere.
Sorry. It was the one with the papers.
John, if I can interject there. So this year we've got it down as 29. I'd ask you to up it to 42.
Yeah.
I would still, while we're talking about 10,000 going towards employing somebody to do things like the grass verges and what have you, I think looking at the way that we're working, I would like, if possible, to leave that figure at 42, which means that if we spend everything on staff wages, we may go up to £3,000 over, as and if it's needed. Is anybody...
The question was, you'd said 13,000, so that's already included in the 42.
Yes.
Yeah? Brilliant, thanks.
So we can either, what we can choose to do now, Don, we can either drop that figure to 39 to incorporate the 10,000 we've just discussed, or we can leave an extra £3,000 contingency and leave it at 42,000.
There is just one, there is just one thing, which is don't forget the NJC pay scales go up on a yearly basis and we usually issue pay rises for service. So there might be leeway. It probably won't be £3,000. It'd be lovely if it was, but it probably won't be. So, but we do need some wiggle room, percentage wiggle room to adapt for those things as well.
Okay, so I'd like to propose that we leave that figure for salaries at 42,000 rather than dropping it to 39.
Are you proposing that, are you, Steve? Are you proposing that? Sorry, do you want us to vote on it?
Yeah, I've just proposed that we leave it at 42 rather than drop it to 39 and leave ourselves a 3,000 contingency. That means if we suddenly get a fence blow down and we've used that budget, at least we've got money there to get somebody out to fix it.
Okay. I second it then.
Lovely. In favour? Dave, Alan?
I'm going to leave you for a short while because I'm going to go and print this new budget because I was working on the old one. So I'm sure
you got it done. Do I need to send it?
No, I've got it. It will take me 2 minutes to print it, but I won't be here. So sorry.
Before you go, Dawn, are you happy to leave that figure at 42?
Sorry. Yeah, it was. My question was merely, was that extra to what was in the budget? So you've discussed it and it's already budgeted. So that's answered the question. So yeah.
Yeah, so that's Harry, then Sean will leave that figure at 42,000. I don't want to move off this yet until Dawn's printed it and come back just in case there's any other questions. So does anybody else have any questions on this this budget? And I've gone through it, and obviously things like the pantomime, we'd allocated money for that this year, which isn't going to be spent because we can't put the pantomime on. Dave?
Can I just go through this while we're still on it, because I got it pretty late at work and it's just, I haven't had a chance to look at it. I'll finish work late tonight. I just want to go through it.
Okay. Can I just go to Alan, who's got a question before we do that?
Yeah.
Alan?
Yeah, I just want to check. So we've agreed that Dave's going to get £10,000 more for allotment based work. Where do I see that in here now?
It's not on there. We have to just go and amend these figures once we've agreed.
And we are going to amend it. So we're not actually signing this off. So there'll be another version. So it's almost not worth discussing anymore, is it? We just wait for the next version.
Either that, or we can look at this with the amended figures and sign it off, and then Sean can send out the new paperwork, rather than have to bring it back to another meeting, because then at least we can get it before council on Thursday. So if we look at it, if we say, right, okay, well, the salaries is there at 42,000. If we were to just write on the sheet for now that we're going to put an additional £20,000 into the Whitworth, okay, because we know we're going to get these figures out from Sean.
Yeah.
It's just agreeing them at this point rather than.
Okay, that's fine.
So
Yeah, we've agreed that already, haven't we? We've agreed they're going to be in the budget.
If we just assume that the 5 projects that we've listed, Sean's going to go away and amend them figures to reflect them changes. Right. We can then agree the budget and double check the figures when Sean reissues them.
Right.
Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave, you had a question then?
It's basically where I've got to rake up some money for this project I've got, and I need that money starting to move forward so it allows me to plan what I can do and what I can't do. And a lot of the project is revolving around the mental health people and the children of Churchtown. So I just want to know what I can tap into and what I can't tap into, because I'm now making provision on that piece of land for allotments to manage that piece of land as well as. So I'm just wanting to know where the money is coming from, because I've got to have that up and running by the end of next month minimum. I've got to start the project now. I'm waiting for some money to come in now to start the job off, but I need to know what I can get the money from to do the jobs, because I've got to buy materials, which I haven't got a figure for yet, because I haven't got it confirmed at the main council meeting. But I can't buy stuff unless I know where I'm going to get my money from.
That's this year's budget, isn't it?
On that.
Say again.
I think Sean has an answer for us on that.
Right.
Sean?
Yeah. So Ian is putting you together the project form that we sent out. He's looking, but until we've got this costed out, Dave, I can't say exactly where it's going to come from, because I've no idea how much money you're asking for. So I need this project properly costing out and in front of me, and then going to the council, so that then I can tell you which budget and which section it's coming from in this budget. But without a sum at the moment, I've got a very generalized figure and an understanding that you've had £1,000 off of Jason Atkin towards it as well. So I need to know how much more, and I need a proper project form to do that. And any project, we sort of agreed that we do these project forms. If you could put that in for me and do it with Ian and get that in front of me. He's already mentioned it to me this week. He's already talked about this. I said, once he's put it together and given me the costs, then I will have a look at the budget and see where we've got the money and how expensive this project is. But at the moment, I've got minimal information, so I don't know where it's coming from or what's happening until I've got that information in front of me. All right.
Right. So
okay. I need specifics, not generalities.
To go to point on this one, I need to clear a piece of land to see what I need to do, and I haven't got any labour.
Okay, that's fine. Can we have this chat with Ian, because he may be able to come up with some solutions, and then we'll have to say we'll talk about it and we'll come down with it. He, as I say, as far as I was aware, the first that I've heard of it really as a proper sort of thing was raised to me the other day with Ian talking about it after your community services meeting. I need some more specifics before I can sort of say anything. Okay, if we can.
Suggestion here, Sean. You know, according to the figures that we've got in front of us, we've got an environmental provision of 9,500, which I'm sure.
We also have an allotment provision, which isn't. None of this is really a problem. It's just I haven't got any figures. I can't say exactly where it's coming from, because if the project costs £10,000, I'm going to have to look for more sources.
The point which I'm making for you and Dave is that actually, Dave, the money is there. It just might have to be moved from one provision to another. But what Sean's saying is she needs some figures so that we know what we've got to do.
I'm not even sure it's next year from the conversation Dave was having. So it might be this year's budget. So I agree.
It is this year's budget.
It is.
So we're mixing things up here.
It's definitely, which is why I'm referring back to the environmental provision, where we've got a £9,500 budget. we've spent 1,264, so we've still got 8,236
Okay.
within that budget. Just 1 second, Dave. James had his hand up then.
No, I'm just saying we're talking. Sorry to get we're getting a bit whatever. Good ideas, Dave. I'm sure the money and with working with Sean and Ian, it'll work out. It'll get there, mate. But at the moment, we're just talking about the budget for next year, aren't we? That's what we're trying to just box off so we can get it to council on Thursday.
As far as you need for this year, Dave, get that form off to Sean and Ian, and then let's look and see where we can divert funds off, because I know that this is time sensitive.
Yeah.
Okay. Alan, you had your hand up again, I think, didn't you? No. Okay. Right. Dawn, have you had a chance to have a look at this, and do you have any other questions to raise? And you're on mute, Dawn. Dawn, you're on mute.
No, I only had one question about this year's budget of the bus shelters. It was a really random thing. Have we not spent loads of money on the bus shelters?
A lot of it fell into last year.
Ah, that's right then.
It was flooding. A lot of it was, with a small amount of vandalism carried over. But yeah, the majority of it was all last year's flooding.
It just intrigued me.
That
we spent a fortune last year on him.
Okay, so what I'd like to do then is I'd like to put a proposal. I'd like to propose that we accept the budget figures based on the amendments that Sean is going to make and resend to us, to take into account the 5 projects that we've discussed in conjunction with raising the precept. Sean?
I'm just going to say what I will do with these is, for the allotments, I will add money into the allotment budget. I will add the youth fund money into the youth fund budget. I will add the Whitworth into the contingency budget, because it will be a contingency thing, but it's ring fence for the Whitworth, if that's all right. So that will go into the contingency section. I'll probably make that its own section.
Yeah, can you make that clear on the budget?
Yeah.
It's ring
The other, hang on, what were the other ones? The office space, I will have to place that into a separate and its own section under administration. So that will have its own budget item. And then what was the last one?
Wages.
Hang on.
A new member of staff. Wages, a new member of staff.
Wages is already in there. So they're already in the wages.
So based on what I've just said, are we happy with that proposal? Does anybody want to second that? Thank you, Alan. In favour? Against? An abstention? Okay, so Dawn abstained, Sean, everybody else was in favour. So if we can make sure we've got the up-to-date figures for when we come to the main council meeting on Thursday, Sean, that would be brilliant. Okay, so date of next meeting. I would think we don't need a date of next meeting.
15th of December, I've got down.
The 15th, yeah, because the main meeting in December is going to be the 18th, so Tuesday the 15th. Everybody happy with that? Okay, so Tuesday the 18th. So if we could now go into the confidential section then, please, Sean, and you can stop recording.